for 6 stories within the walkable catchment, right along the Western Line. And within the commercial areas themselves, for example, Henderson commercial area already, as I mentioned to Councillor Henderson before, allows for roughly 18 stories in the commercial area.
Thank you, but the Western Line is different to all the other lines. That line, you made a comment before about the fact that the Western Line is it's stipulated out of our control a bit in the legislation, correct?
That's correct for the inner 5 stations.
Okay, only. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
The only requirement on Henderson Station walkable catchment is 6, apart from what's already in the unitary plan. So, but that's on every station, no matter where it is. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, look, I just wanted to ask a question more on behalf of local board than myself. You may need to order the big contingency of medics to be waiting, because I'm going to say something that you won't believe. I'm delighted with where you've got to on this. I think either scenario A...
Do you repeat that, Councillor?
Yeah, I'll repeat it. I'm delighted with where you've got to it. I'm comfortable with, for the Howick ward only, I'm only talking about Howick ward, scenario A or scenario B, sign us up for either, it doesn't worry me. But the local board have made, I think, a reasonable suggestion, which is sort of tiny. You don't need to do the bit around Meadowlands if you're doing scenario A, and they don't like the little bit it says at the very beginning, A of their submission. Support scenario A with a variation to support intensification in Meadowlands, so we still keep the same numbers, there's no reduction, but we do that little, can we do the map again? Have we got the map here? Is it possible to bring up the People's Democratic Republic of Howick on the map? Because you can just see the little block around the Meadowlands thing was about the same number. Yeah, if you can just zoom out there, I'll show you quickly. You're just down to where the little purple, 3 purple pieces are. You can see them by themselves out in the middle, towards the bottom low. But that's the Meadowlands Shopping Centre under A. And under B, they end up with a big brown covering around them. But Howick's still got on that northern slope, what they say, the northern slopes from Mellons Bay Road and so on. So to just make that fractional adjustment in the Howick ward, I'm not a big advocate either way, I'm not, but it would give you the same numbers, it just would move it from that little bit around the northern slope of the Howick village and accommodate it around the Meadowlands Somerville shopping centre, for which I think everybody that I've talked to is okay with. Is this the place to try and do that, or is that the independent hearing panels that would be best to hear that submission and make a determination? I'm not trying to take any of the numbers away from you. We've got what we want, and I'm
Councillor Williamson, in terms of Meadowlands, the staff recommendation is to, it's a local centre, so the recommendation is to not have the intensification around Meadowlands. So to that extent, the board would be, if you agree, the board would essentially be getting what it's after. In terms of how it is classified as a town centre, to further remove the 6 stories in that orange area around the town centre. You'll see to the north already, Phil, if you can zoom in, you'll see an area around Stockhead Hill where the zoning is less than the 6 stories. That's a long-standing kind of constraint restriction that's carried over. That's the sort of mixed housing urban area. But the orange areas, to start removing some of that orange just for the Howick Town Centre, it would start to beg the question, why not many other town centres?
Yeah, I don't want to create precedents and have the whole glide slope go.
It would start to undermine the principled basis for the plan change as a whole for town centres. However, the local board and local residents through submissions can certainly look to progress that through the hearings.
So that, when I answer them back, I say you guys should be trying to go to the independent hearings panel and see if you can convince them.
That's certainly an approach they could take. Yep.
Okay, I'm comfortable, very.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fletcher keeps getting bumped.
Oh, look, that's fine. I don't mind. Is it my turn now? Oh, great. Well, firstly, can I say the officers are doing incredibly well because they've been sitting there for quite a while. And we had a long debate earlier this morning on governance, and it just struck me that sometimes we just get so process-driven with planning that we can lose sight of what we're trying to achieve strategically. And I know what you are trying to respond to us today is more of that strategic oversight. I'd also like to thank Noel Reardon for the time that he has generously given me in understanding a few bits and bobs, but I've got some questions that probably relate to that area that Noel is largely responsible for. So I wonder, my first round of questions were more at a regional level, and I'm just zooming in now a little more locally for things that pique my interest. Noel, what percentage of residential zoned land is within the 10K area that we've been discussing today of SCAs?
I'm sorry, I haven't got that information in front of me. I do know it's somewhere, and I will find it.
Okay, that's fine. I can come back then. I'll come back then to you, John, while Noel's getting that information. And this is really in trying to respond to locals who are, you know, obviously the Aberdeen Puketapapa area is with the Western Line, there is the need for a lot more intensification. But it was put to me that under scenario A, the residential capacity of the Aberdeen local board area would increase by 74% or 52,000 dwellings, but under scenario B, it will increase by 114.7% or 81,000. Can you confirm that? Because I didn't know the answer to that. And it was locals coming to me talking about, you know, A or B or what that actually meant for them. Because, you know, there's a big difference then for them. And what we've been trying to do is to look rather more strategically, but that was sort of specific to the feeling of pressure by those locals. So, John, if you could comment.
Councillor Fletcher, so the big difference between A and B for the board, you mentioned this, Puketapapa or Albert Eden or both?
No, this was just Albert Eden.
Albert Eden. So the big difference between A and B is the inclusion of some local centres in B but not A, and the inclusion of the frequent transport corridors in B, not A. So that would account for the extra capacity that B provides for relative to A. The specific numbers, we have Sarah Lomas here. I think she's...
No, well, I've sort
possibly
of had
diving into
some
specific
contact
numbers.
with Sarah, but I mean, we've all been trying to work under
Yep.
time restraints, and we've been trying to get information because it would be good to be able to satisfy concerns of locals, and I appreciate Sarah as well, so thank you.
So we can certainly provide that.
But it's the segue
meeting.
for me to come into what is a reoccurring theme from people, and that is that in either A or B, they more than double in terms of capacity. And the feeling that amongst locals that the retention, therefore, of a few more high-quality SSA properties in Mount Eden and Kingsland wouldn't really make a discernible difference in terms of the overall quantum. So, which is going to lead me into Noel coming up with all sorts of sterling answers here. What I'm trying to say to you strategically is this something that you've given thought to, given that for some people, particularly local community people, special character is an important part. It's part of the history of the area. Is that something that you've tried to look into? And we all want to see growth. We all want to see this intensification done well. But whether there is the ability to make some provision further for some of the special character that potentially might be lost.
Through the chair, I'll begin. So Albert Eden absolutely has one of the biggest, if not the biggest, uplift in capacity, and that's largely driven by the government requirement around the 5 train stations, most of which run through Albert Eden. Also the requirement around town centres and local centres. So whether it's A or B, there is a big capacity uplift, more in B than in A for the reasons I mentioned previously. The local board, from memory, was pretty supportive of B, so the
It
additional
wasn't
capacity.
unanimous, though. It was
Yeah.
sort of, there was quite a bit of discussion about it, but by majority, yes.
With some qualifications and also some recommendations to allow for more capacity in other areas, including outside of the 10 kilometres from memory. That's where the board was situated. In terms of qualifying matters of all sorts, including special character, the decision of the committee to retain the approach as it is for now and let the hearings panel hear the submissions and come back with recommendations is something that staff have essentially adhered to. So that there is a direction from you as a committee to effectively retain special character as proposed in PC 120 when it went out for submissions last year and allow that to play through the hearings. So we haven't, we're not coming back with any different recommendations on that front. But Noel, in terms of the proportions and so on?
Thanks, John. In a general sense, it's about, of all the properties within 10 kilometres, 10% of those properties are special character. I've got the exact figures, but that's in a general sense. Within the walkable catchments of Mangawhau and Kingsland, it's about 10%.
So, I mean, ultimately, it's about governance, and yes, we have these directives with regards those stations on the Western Line, but is there a case at all for further advocacy, Noel, given your long association with special character since, you know, I've listened carefully to you over a long period of time on this, and you know, it's always a bit fraught, but is there any weighting that we could be giving to further retention of special character, given the further intensification, you know, doubling in that particular area? Is that something officers have given any consideration to at all?
Just to be fair on staff here, during all the workshops and during any decisions, there was no questions in the last 6 months for staff to go away and change, alter, fix, whatever, the qualifying matters, including special character. So I need to make it clear that it's not a staff opinion, that just wasn't.
Sorry, I was basing it on conversations I've chosen to proactively have. And I didn't know that I was forbidden for having those private conversations with officers. All I'm trying to establish, and this is about governance, this is about a meeting here today, and sometimes we make decisions just process driven, and sometimes we make them on new information. But my question is, given the importance to Aucklanders, and given the capacity that will have to be met in that area anyway, would there be some benefit into actually finding some ability to put some weighting on some further retention of special character?
Just a sort of general response to that, this issue was canvassed extensively through Plan Change 78 and its preparation, and that balance between the amount of special character to be retained as a qualifying matter and the need and the drive for intensification was discussed extensively then at political meetings, and the council arrived at its position, and that was adopted through Plan Change 78 and largely rolled over through Plan Change 120. The same general approach has applied to the light rail corridor whiteout area. There was an additional planning control in those catchments because two of those catchments, in particular Mangawhau and Kingsland, the amount of special character in those two catchments was considered from a planning perspective a significant constraint on potential development. I think it was around about 30% of those catchments were special character, and through Plan Change 120 that was reduced to 10%. That has been retained through the scenarios, that will be for the council to defend through the hearings process, and it will be essentially a planning argument rather than one of special character.
There is nothing that is going to further negate the ability for the community to make submissions on these matters.
Oh, absolutely not. They will be, the community will be able to ask, as John has mentioned previously, ask the independent hearings panel to do anything within the scope of the plan change. The amount of special character will be an issue that's within the scope of the plan change. We will also get submissions seeking it is all retained and it is all removed, just as we did with plan change 78.
Thank you, Noel. That's been great. And again, may I thank you for the time that you've been able to give me to actually look at this in greater detail.
Thank you. Just to clarify on that one, just to make sure we've got it. And I know we can all have conversations on our own, and that's absolutely awesome. That's what we're supposed to be doing as well. But my understanding is there was no request for that work to be done in March. Am I incorrect in saying even the amendments included no change to qualifying matters?
That's correct. As I understood, I've received no instructions to do any further work on special character. The work we have completed was done for plan change 78, and that's been rolled over.
And that was not brought up at workshops or any of the meetings. Cool. Thank you. Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Richard. Through the chair, I just want to clarify, was one of the purposes of P1 Plan Change 120 to better align council infrastructure with the new housing? Is that one of the kind of drivers behind why this has been initiated?
Councillor says, I guess it's probably the other way around. It's a requirement from government to align our land use and our zoning and our housing with transport infrastructure. So this.
But what about other infrastructure?
In terms of other infrastructure, there is nothing specific in the NPSUD. There is an opportunity to, over time, align council water care investment in water, wastewater infrastructure, government investment in schools, other community facilities, healthcare, with the growing city, which under a plan change like this has more of the development likely to happen around the transport hubs, the centres and the stations. So possibly I haven't answered your question.
No, you have, John.
Megan, you might have picked that up. Maybe you have a better response.
No, that was great, John. I think I'd probably characterise the government's position more around, if they are making an assumption that with the right tools, growth will pay for growth, and therefore infrastructure can meet the requirements. It doesn't kind of really matter where it is. This council doesn't have that view. So a little bit in response to the Deputy Mayor's question, this plan change does better align kind of where we have infrastructure now or planned, but there's not even plan change 78 wasn't a direct correlation between, where infrastructure is and therefore where housing is. So I wouldn't characterise probably the government's thinking on that as the same as ours.
Okay. So I guess the purpose of that question, and just trying to understand more the drivers, like we've got a compulsory mandate from the government to try, build this more compact city and try and utilise infrastructure, particularly transport infrastructure. I've just heard. Yet that same government is, through its fast track processes, is allowing new housing where it's impossible for us to get that infrastructure stretched out to. So that's the reason for my question, Megan. It's like, on one hand, it seems to me like they're trying to get better bang for buck and growth paid for growth, yet we're going to have to spend hundreds and hundreds of millions, if we can at all, to stretch roading and other public infrastructure transport infrastructure and other infrastructure to these new housing developments, which is just seems counterintuitive. So I don't know if you'd like to comment on that, but that was the reason for my line of questioning.
No, I think you've done that really well, because you're right. And of course, this plan change is about the urban area, or residential, whatever you want to call it. It's not about the greenfields. And so that's a real challenge for us, particularly in the greenfields, a little bit in Brown, but mainly in the greenfields. This conversation we're having today is about residential housing type growth and some business, but really about housing. The bigger challenge we have across the system is that I think the government's kind of view about this, i.e. you can put development anywhere as long as, growth pays for growth and the developer deals with infrastructure. That is not this council's position. And quite soon, through fast track decisions that will be coming and have come, and the national direction that's going to come, that presumably will be in this direction about enabling development anywhere, this council will have a view about that, and it won't be the same as the government's, as it has been explained by this council at this stage. So yeah, there's a real challenge coming.
Well, if I may, Chair, I think that's a really helpful answer, and I appreciate that. I guess I'll try and phrase this as a question, but I guess it doesn't matter what we say. We're trumped by the central government's decision if they can choose to ignore our position. That's what it seems like to date. So that's my fear going forward. I know it's a little bit out of scope of the decision we're making today, but just since we've touched on it, they don't seem to be taking any. They don't seem to be taking any or making acknowledgement or taking any advice from what we're giving them around these fast track processes.
Look, I think the ability that the Minister has given us to make amendments to Plan Change 120 actually does provide the Council the opportunity in the residential, in the urban area, to make some decisions to that, to try and get it intensification in perhaps better places. I know that's a subjective comment, but, to as opposed to kind of everywhere all the time at the same time. So it allows us to be a little bit more nuanced, which is a good thing. The bigger system question you have, and greenfields, you're right, and I know this will be a conversation through the long-term plan as well for you, where that's around 10 years of infrastructure spend and priority areas for this council to deliver infrastructure. This is where this bigger question of how Auckland will develop will come to sharp focus, and I think some fast track, you'll be asked to perhaps make some decisions to appeal or look at what are council's next steps about some fast tracks that will be likely approved in the near future.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
So if I may just add one point of relevance, just coming back from the strategic and fast-track legislation and things outside the scope of the plan change. One thing that is very much in scope of the plan change is that the Council has received submissions to rezone future urban land, areas without the infrastructure, on PC 120. So one of the advantages in the recommendation to withdraw in part is that would make it very clear-cut that those submissions have no place in the PC 120 process if you chose to withdraw in part.
Thank you. Right, so we are done on questions. We will get the staff to move back. I know that some people have already got a cup of tea, but I think we're going to take a 10-minute break. I did bring some biscuits, but half of them are gone, but get in quick if you want one. Have a break and we'll be back at, let's just say 4 o'clock, because it will be 12 minutes. Yep, so staff can have some time as well. Thank you. So thank you very much, staff, but we are complete with you at this stage. There may be questions on the amendments, though.
Thank you.